Good morning, good morning, good morning to all of you who have joined us today in Chicago. It is a little rainy where I am in Chicagoland in Elmhurst, at Elmhurst University, where I'm from. And thanks for joining us for this Empowering Minds, Culturally Sustaining STEM Education mini conference, if you will. And today I have with us an illustrious panel who are going to share some of their insights with you around how to support students in having what we can call culturally sustaining and culturally relevant STEM education. The mere idea that you are here today on a Saturday morning says volumes about your commitment to the achievement of all of your students. So I thank you all for joining us. Just a few notes. My name again is Teresa Robinson. I can be reached at teresa.robinson@elmhurst.edu. Below are the ways that you can reach me via social media if you so choose to. Please tweet or post your reflections or things that you are learning as we go along this day. For our agenda today, we are in our main room, which will also be the main room for our call to action at the end of the day. They are the same links for our participants. And so we will have two breakout sessions today, one with Meg Ormiston, and she will be talking to you, and Meg's waving there. Thank you, Meg. On equity and technology in the mathematics classroom, and it is designed, Meg is a powerhouse presenter, educational consultant, and author of many books, most popular for her Now Classrooms series. And so she's going to be sharing her insights with you all for those who are spanning pre-K through 12 and even beyond, how to support your students, especially in this environment in which we're teaching, which is predominantly digital. The second breakout session will be at the same time, happening concurrently with me, and I will be working with the science educators, and we'll be talking about STEM for cultural relevance and sustainability. And while it is focused on science, there are some references there for technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then, as I said, we will come back, we'll have a small screen break to give our eyes a break, and our cheeks, so we can get up and move around a little bit. And we'll come back for a call to action. And I'm encouraging you all to come back for the call to action, because it's going to be a time for us to reflect on action steps. If you were here with us for part one of this conference in October, please just drop a 1 in the chat. So that one was about setting a foundation for theory. This conference is moving from theory to practice. And so all of our backgrounds, all of our breakouts, are going to be practice centered. What you can do next week to improve the accessibility of STEM education for all students. And so we want to use that call to action time to give you an opportunity as an audience to reflect on what you've heard in the panel, as well as the breakouts, and communicate with one another so that we can truly build that community. There are some expectations for our session here. We're going to go ahead and get started now that we have all of those things out of the way. For our panel today, we want you to be prepared to succeed in educating youth, especially in culturally diverse settings and in high-need local educational agencies. These are the least of our students. We know that we are living and have been living in the midst of a dual pandemic, all of 2020, and looks that way now. And so children are experiencing lots of social emotional needs, and science and STEM education is something that we can use to encourage our students to be active learners, be empowered to take control of their own lives in education, as well as achievement. We also want to orient you to the benefits of culturally responsive pedagogy in STEM education. Sometimes as secondary people, which I have a background in secondary education, we put the content first. In elementary schools, they tend to talk about the student first. And so we want to make sure that we are orienting you to the benefits if you are a secondary teacher and above. Well, you know, it's time for us to get right to it. The title of today's panel is Digital Equity and Inclusion in STEM Education. Problem, issue, solution. Many of us know what the problems are. We hear the problems expounded all the time. The problem becomes an issue when there's disagreement around the best ways to solve the problem. So there are many, many philosophies and theories about the best way to educate for STEM achievement. And so what we're going to do is talk to our panelists today about solutions. We're going to hear from them about their experiences. Again, we have Meg Ormiston here, who is an educator, illustrious career in education. We have Ms. Valerie Ross, who is representing a Fortune 500 company, mechanical engineer, Black woman, just a powerhouse, and talk to us about her experiences in connecting what you as classroom teachers and faculty do and the impact that that can have. And then last but not least, Mr. Van Richardson, who is representing the tech field, who works for iManage and has an illustrious career. He's working towards his doctorate to support diversity in the tech field. So we have a wide range of panelists here with us today who are going to offer us their insights. Our first presenter is Ms. Valerie Ross. She's a senior engineer for Caterpillar Incorporated with a background in powertrain design and analysis. And I'm sure she's going to tell us what that is. I have an idea, but I'm going to let her tell us what that is. In her current position, she works on transmission clutch software and collaborates with multiple teams to resolve friction disc design issues. She is a strong believer in lifelong learning, completing her master's degree in 2013 in mechanical engineering from Bradley University, and earned her Six Sigma black belt in 2017. I have a sneaking suspicion that's not about judo.
It's not about judo.
Okay. Valerie still continues to notice a lack of representation in her field. To help address the disparity, she talks with students about STEM careers at her local urban league, mentors the next generation of Black STEM students through Girls Who Code, and tutors students in math through her church. Let's give an electronic welcome to Ms. Valerie Ross. Valerie?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. And I'm going to start my timer because I tend to talk, so I'm going to make sure I keep it to 10 minutes, and we go. So what happened in my childhood that connected me to STEM? So for the majority of my childhood and my life, I lived in Peoria, Illinois, so I'm right downstate from you guys. But in the 90s, I also spent time in Melbourne, Australia, and in Geneva, Switzerland. And those were impactful, wonderful experiences for me to get outside of Peoria, Illinois, and really grow my worldview. Next slide, please. But they did come with challenges because being uprooted and moving overseas, you're continually learning, you're continually adapting to your new situations, sometimes struggling, especially in Geneva, Switzerland, where you have to learn a completely new language. So in that sense, math and science were a bit of a respite for me. They were mostly immutable. We know that math is not always math is always changing. We're learning new things, but mostly immutable for me. And it gave me something that I could cling to amongst all of this change in my life. Moving back to the United States, I realized I was a little bit different. I may have been ahead in math and science than some of my peers, but it was difficult to connect to them in any cultural references because I'd spent so much time outside of the United States. And I kind of noticed that little bit of difference between myself and my peers. And again, math and science were a way that I could connect to them and grow my network and reconnect with some of the people that I knew before. And then when it came time to select a college, I really didn't know. I was one of those people that was undecided. I really didn't know which way I wanted to go. And if not for my advisor and my parents seeing that indecision and saying maybe engineering would be a good avenue for you, I probably would have stuck more to the undecided path. But I said, I guess I'll give engineering a chance because, again, math and science were so core to me. And if I fail or if I don't like it, I can always switch to something else in my sophomore year. But I tried it out and it stuck. And that's really what connected me to STEM in my childhood. Next slide, please. So what are the challenges that I faced in my college and career path? And I know a lot of these are always rehashed. And I would have thought that growing up internationally, I wouldn't have the same issues, but still, especially in my career, I found myself being the youngest in the room, being the only woman in the room, being the only Black person in the room, being the person in the room with the fewest degrees or fewest years of experience, afraid of giving the wrong answer because I'm afraid of how that will make me look, afraid of saying no because maybe that will reflect negatively on my performance review. My mentor will be so happy that I put this acronym on here. What does it mean to fail? To me, to fail is your first attempt in learning. And in each of these cases, I had to overcome that in order to be heard and get my opinion out there. Sometimes it meant that I was wrong. Sometimes it meant that I, ended up messing something up or ended up designing something that really couldn't work. But then I learned from that experience and I was able to grow in my career, either whether we're talking about college or whether we're talking about my professional career. And down tiny so that nobody can see it, I put in parentheses, I still struggle with that. So that's still a daily struggle to make sure that I realize that failure doesn't mean that you stop. Failure means that you learn from that experience and you grow from that experience. Next slide, please. Why does representation matter in STEM? So if you ever have a chance, Google the series of tweets from the medical MAB. In the series of tweets, the Black doctor is relating an experience that he had trying to talk to a patient and being understood better when he went back to talk to that patient one-on-one and communicating to the patient that they didn't really actually have a stroke, but they ended up having a diagnosis of MS. And it was only when that doctor went back and communicated to that the Black male patient one-on-one that he was able to be understood. So why does representation matter in STEM? I can be understood and I can communicate my point in a way which it can be received because we have a connection, because you trust that you trust my worldview, and I'm able to communicate in a way that you understand. My personal example from 5th or 6th grade was that I had a group project. I had to do more than my share. And I spent 3 or 4 hours trying to contact my partners in that project. And my dad pointed out at that time that you spent 3 hours trying to connect with these people. It'll take you 1 hour to actually do the work. So I went ahead and did the work and forgot about it. My dad later relates the same story to a group of 5th or 6th graders. And one of the young girls in the front says, oh, that happened to me. And so having that relatable experience shows students that I can achieve more, I can do more. And in STEM, I think that is a very important point to make, because we're not going to make those technological breakthroughs and we're not going to make those big discoveries just doing the same things over and over again, day in, day out. So it's important to see in STEM, oh, I see that somebody else did more and can do more and has the ability to do more. That's something that I can do too. So I think that's another way that representation matters in STEM. My third point here is that I'm talking to one of my mentors. He's a director level, and he has 20 something years in experience. And I'm saying, oh, my boss is doing this, and oh, my boss is doing that. And then he's quiet. He lets me get it all out. He lets me just completely rail on my boss. And then he gives me a relatable story that's similar to my own. And I'm able to see that, oh, maybe I should rethink the way that I'm approaching my boss. Maybe I should rethink the way that I'm approaching that situation. And I think having that relatable experience with somebody, with a mentor that looks like you can say, the message here is, I can seek counsel from someone who has navigated corporate life, or take out corporate life, put in something else. I can seek counsel from someone who has navigated corporate life before. And I think having that mentorship from somebody who looks like you, who's navigated this before, who's successful, will help you say, this is a navigatable path, and I can get around this to get to whatever goal that I'm trying to achieve. And finally, I know we talk a lot about natural hair, especially now that there's more legislation coming out to prevent people from being discriminated against from how they wear their hair, or from other things. For me personally, I went natural back in 2007, and I was so worried that I would not be taken seriously. I was so worried that people would approach me differently if I wore my natural hair. And I cut it all off, and really it was nothing. But take out natural hair, insert something else, I can show up to work and be authentically myself and be taken seriously. And I think in that sense, if I had a mentor, if I had somebody else who also wore their hair naturally, who was also in a position of authority or power, I would be like, oh, this is no thing. Let me just go ahead and do that, and not have to worry about, am I going to be taken seriously? Next slide, please. So what does my day look like? Sometimes it looks like a coal mine site in Belle, West Virginia. Sometimes it looks like an inspection at a dealership in Quebec, Canada, and Val d'Or, Quebec in Canada. And next slide, please. Sometimes it looks like spreadsheets all day. But one more slide, please. But each day is a collaborative effort between multiple people, multiple teams, to achieve a very difficult common goal. Sometimes it is exciting in that I get to engage with dealers, customers, or even mechanics that work on my product. Sometimes it's mundane, where I am working on a spreadsheet and trying to just boil that down to one particular number. Whatever the case is, it is a collaborative effort all the time. And I think that needs to be stressed in STEM education, that yes, there's a lot that you can achieve on your own, but most of the time you're going to be working in groups. And so you have to be able to work in groups and get the most out of your partners. For me personally, I like to work and I like to leave work. And then again, in small parentheses, I still struggle with that. But, and especially these days where we're working from home, that's still a struggle. Oh, I'm trying to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes. Next slide, please. So finally, I want to leave you guys with, what can STEM educators do to empower the next generation of STEM professionals and improve equity and diversity in STEM education? Probably the most memorable educators were those that were most engaged and most passionate about their subject. So engage your students, be present, be authentic. I have the next one that says, pick someone who isn't ready but can get ready. Often there are some of these opportunities where students need to be volunteered, or they need to be selected. Maybe select somebody who hasn't been selected or volunteered before. For me, I got the chance to travel around the world. I had traveled extensively throughout Europe, Australia and Polynesia by the time I was 16. Not everybody gets that opportunity. Not everybody gets to see the world the way that I saw it. So being in that little Peoria, Illinois box, you may not get a whole lot of experiences to see outside of that. So maybe pick somebody who isn't ready but can grow into that opportunity. The third point is, bring in someone who's been there before. If you're having a gecko week, bring in a Black gecko scientist so that your students can say, oh, I can be a Black gecko scientist too. I can see that career path for myself. But seeing yourself in a career path is just so valuable. And then finally, give honest, sometimes unvarnished feedback. Gauge your audience. I don't want you to make anybody cry, but I can think of in middle school and in high school and in college, even professionally, I'm aiming for something, whether that be a grade or whether that be a promotion, and asking for how can I get that, and getting kind of lukewarm feedback. Give the honest feedback and back it up with actual facts. Because then what that did for me is I dug in, I did the work, I did the research, and not only did I pass that class with whatever grade it was I was looking for, or not only did I exceed in whatever project I was working on, I then learned more from that experience. I then grew a little bit more as a person. And with that, I'm going to conclude. Thank you, Dr. Robinson, for allowing me to speak today.
Oh, thank you so much for those wonderful words and the connections to the real life of a scientist, or a STEM professional, shall I say. So we're going to move right on to our second panelist, who is Mr. Van Richardson. He's a Chief Information Officer for iManage. Van leads IT teams across multiple disciplines and geographies with expertise including infrastructure management, enterprise applications, and cloud technologies. We all hear that word, so Van has experience with that. Van focuses on providing information technology value to the business by forging key relationships with stakeholders throughout the organization. He is a doctoral student with a specific focus on the underrepresentation of African Americans in leadership positions within the information technology sector, with an expected completion of early 2022. And we know that that eventually will happen. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Richardson.
Good morning, and thanks for the pressure, Dr. Robinson.
You're welcome.
Thanks for inviting me to the panel. Again, Van Richardson. I bring to the table here from private experience and public experience of over 25 years in IT. I've worked for organizations such as Citibank, Fujitsu, ITT, and many other global companies. I love this conversation of STEM and the exposure of technology to students, to teachers, and to others around the globe, because it fosters a level of dedication or a level of interest that forces people to think differently about how things are happening day to day. So when I answer one of the first questions, I look at the representation. Why is representation important in STEM? Is because it gives you the opportunity to see others that look like you and give you an ambitious element to sort of say, you don't have to do these certain things. It brings a unique element that takes you out of your comfort zone and provides you a vernacular that you can aspire to do more. And that because you don't see people that look like you in those roles, it sparks an interest to do more. And to my personal thoughts, it really makes me take a step back and says, yes, I can do it. I can see it. I can own it. And I can take care of it and go from there. I love some of the topics that Valerie, Miss Ross, just mentioned in her presentation of walking in the room and sometimes you keep seeing, well, or not seeing anyone that looks like you in those conversations. And that is, for me, one thing that's always been inspiring for me, because guess what? I want to break that barrier. I want to be the one to walk in the door and sort of say, hey, guess what? I'm here. And this is how we're going to go do it. And so that's been one of the driving forces that I think that's really been important for me. When I look at what my day looks like in the information technology sector, specifically around leading others and teams, Jesus Christ, it starts at 4 a.m. just because I'm one of those weirdos, I should say, that I tend to pick up my phone, look at it, and oh, this happened last night. But it also forces me now to learn how to work with others. I've got a global team, teams in UK, London, Belfast, Bangalore, obviously the United States, and learning how to understand various cultures, learning triggers, learning how to engage others, and also things that are more important of really just how do you bring people, how do you build that trust of others that when you can't see, you can't touch. The COVID-19 situation has put us in a situation now that I've got team members I've not seen or physically been able to sort of shake their hand. So now it's like, you know, how do you put a leaf out there and provide the level of engagement, direction, strategic conversations that get them to inspire them to really do the work that's on task for your team. So my day starts with reaching out to others in the UK, honestly, because I think that's what I should do. Building that trust up front is extremely important. And I didn't set my timer, so I'm gonna need somebody to
I got you.
at my 10 minutes.
I got you. You're 2 minutes in.
Oh, okay, good. I love this topic. I get distracted by it, so it's okay. But it's really it's the engagement, and I think that that's very important and critical when you're looking at STEM, when you're looking at technology, when you're looking at even just general business. So I'm often asked, you know, how did I get in IT? You can't see it, but I got a Commodore 64 computer. Yeah, I'm that nerd, but I got a Commodore 64 box up top. So I'm often asked, how did I get into the technology field and why it's important to me and why I look to engage others in this topic? It's because it was a problem that I wanted to understand. It was something that I wanted to learn more about, and I wanted to figure out how and why these things were happening. And when I bring that back to a compute perspective, it looks like, okay, I can hit this key on this keyboard, and something outputs. So, you know, as a kid and as a youth, I think that the whole STEM conversations are extremely important, because now it's inspiring folks that may not be comfortable with math, that may not be comfortable with science or engineering in Mrs. Ross's space, which I'm not going to say I'm ever a scientific engineer in that space. So don't. But I will say the technological aspect and the mathematic components really interested me, because now it will me to see like how these things are happening. How does banking work? How does technology work? What's driving that widget down the assembly line? What part of those components and what's behind those components are really important, and why are they happening? I think was really were my drivers. So when I was a youth I went to Faulkner and I went to Pershing. Obviously, I went to Hyde Park. I was exposed to technology because my parents bought me the Commodore computer. Like I got up top, and I actually had a Texas Instrument computer that you had to push the freaking cartridge in to get something to display on your screen. So those things and being exposed to those things at such an early age, I think are very impactful for our youth. And as a STEM educator, my challenge or charge to you is to think of those creative ways that you can bring those solutions or technologies to your kids and make you think about how you can teach them something new or expose them to something new that makes them step out of their comfort zone and look at how they can do better in what they're doing. As I step back and look over my 25 plus, I won't say the exact number, but 25 plus years of experience at large companies, I look at challenges that I've experienced in that time. And when I pause, and you know, I honestly can say it's not always been a happy picture. It's one that, you know, you've had to grin and bear, and you've had to overexceed to sort of be the guy in the room and make sure you don't get missed over. You've had to be more aggressive. You've had to sometimes take a step and to say, hey, I didn't like that, and we got to fix it. So challenges, I think we're gonna have challenges today, even in this life, even in 2021, we still have some of these similar challenges. But yes, being recognized for your expertise and knowledge has always been something that I think that individuals like myself or people of color and have had the experience and go through. So it puts a level of ownership and requirements on yourself to do the right thing, to sometimes take that, be overly transparent, be over communicative. Make sure that you're documenting what you're doing. You're saying what you're saying what you're doing. You're doing what you say, because sometimes, and there are some environments that those things can get misconstrued and taken and then come back to haunt you. So you feel like at times that you're carrying the burden of your culture, your race, your ethnicity, all the other thousands, millions of people that look like you, that you're doing that. And also an important piece about that is when you're in sort of the levels that I've gotten to in major corporations, it's you sometimes feel that you're carrying the burdens of those that look like you to the boardroom. So it requires you to make sure that you're doing the best you can all the time. And I think those are very inspirational things that I like to talk to people I mentor, coach, or talk about these things. I know my time is going because I can talk about technology in this for hours, but just a couple more things I'll end with. When I look at what STEM educators can do to empower the next generation of STEM professionals, I sort of touched on this a bit earlier, but I think it's treating everybody equal, thinking of different ways to step out of the box. I can't stand that term, but I've just used it. But think out of the box, and look at other ways that you can teach your students to, or meet them in their spot. So if you got a kid that loves to play with a robot, guess what? Bring a robot to the class, let them understand it, teach them how to make the arms move, teach them the simple things that brings them in and makes them feel comfortable. And as an educator, you have to think about things that it's not how we learn technology or grew up in education and things like that. Reading a book is not for everybody at this time. Sometimes you have to take a step back and figure out, how do I meet them where they're at and bring them where they need to go? And I think that is what takes us as educators, it takes us as professionals, as leaders in organizations to another level. That means that we actually care about our students, we care about their interests, we care about their growth, and are going to inspire them to be the best of them that they can be. And I think I'm going to end with one last thing. I love the topics of just trying to learn more about technology, and I go back to when I started, like, what does my day look like? I'm sort of a guy that will, and I couldn't stand reading in school, so I'm gonna be very transparent. I couldn't stand it, and before I started my doctoral process, I pick up a book, I fall asleep. I couldn't stand it. I just could not stand it. So, one of the things I force myself to do now is to take a step back and increase that muscle memory out. Break that pain point that I know that I can't stand to do. I will read it now, and whether it's printing something out or using my iPad or doing something else, teaching myself to step out of those things I've gotten comfortable in doing is what inspires me and teaches me to do. So when I say my morning starts like this at 4 or 5 in the morning, guess what? It does. I'm reading it. I'm forcing myself to do something that, you hear my little one in the background, but I'm forcing myself to do something that is uncomfortable so I can make it comfortable. So those are the sort of parting words I would like to give to you and inspire you on as you look at how STEM relates to the education profession, and as you move forward with your class. And I think I'm probably at my 10 minutes.
You're right on time. Thank you so much for your comments. And we are going to move right ahead with our next panelist, who is Miss Meg Ormiston. She is often called the teacher of teachers, as she delivers professional development locally, nationally, and internationally. Meg is also an award-winning author, co-author of 12 books, focused on teaching and learning using digital tools. Meg has been teaching online for over 10 years. So before it was a need, Meg was doing it. And her upbeat presentation style will have you laughing as you are learning practical skills. You can start using immediately. Meg is doing our breakout, as I said, next. So at this time, I turn it over to you, Meg.
Awesome. Go ahead and advance our slides. And I'm so happy to be with you today. And I am, of course, the, I just lost my desktop. All right, Mr. Richardson. I lost my desktop and oh my gosh, how funny. There we go. Oh my gosh, isn't that so funny? I always love being the technology leader when my technology doesn't work. So sorry about that. I want to go ahead and tell you a little kind of an adventure of my 35 years in education. I actually started out as a National Science Foundation grant, I'm going to say experiment classroom. And we would try all these different crazy things in my classroom when I was teaching second grade, third grade, fourth grade, sixth grade. Then I went on to coach math teachers for years. And then technology kind of rolled in. I got the first computer in the building. I had to figure out how it worked. That was interesting. And so I was kind of this experimental classroom all the time. And I started teaching in this whole cooperative learning, and I really focused on collaboration, communication, creativity, critical thinking, and I was different. Man, I was so different. And other teachers were like, no, here's the book, here's how we teach, here's the way it's done. And I was like, no, but that's not what works for kids. So go ahead and advance. What works for kids, it doesn't work. And so I spent 13 summers. I would get on the road at the end of May. I'd come home exhausted in August, teaching teachers how to do this in a different way. And I was weird. I was different. People were like, I can't do it that way. Give me the cheat sheet. Tell me how to do it. Tell me exactly step by step by step. I'm like, you can't do step by step when you're doing technology because Zoom is going to change tomorrow. So that step by step that I'm going to give you today won't work. And so I was doing all this crazy professional development with people like that weren't hearing me. So I was the oddball, always the oddball, trying to say, we have to use technology. We have to use projects. We have to do this. We have to get people outside of the comfort zone. But I'm up against YouTube is blocked. I'm like, what do you mean it's blocked? And in many cases, it's still blocked in schools, if you can imagine this. And so I did tons of work in professional development, and people would get so frustrated immediately. They'd cry, teachers would, and then people would be laughing, but try to understand school in a different way. So I was always the oddball out and not trying to follow the step-by-step. Go ahead and advance. All right, so if you could imagine, crazy. I wrote 5, these are my most recent books. I have 12 total, but I did this with 26 co-authors, all from the Chicago area. One of them, Elmhurst University alum. I'm just gonna leave it up and see if you can figure that out. And there's a second grade book, there's a K2 book, a 3-5, 6-8, 9-12, and a leadership book. And wow, we all wrote together. It's amazing to think that we actually got this published, and it's, wow, it's already won some awards. So we're really excited, but really talking about the future, digital tools. And this has been my passion since I started, but it was exciting to see it kind of all come together. All right, go ahead and advance. All right, this is the kind of, everyone take a look at this, because as I'm listening to Mr. Richardson talk and Miss Ross, as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, yes, we're all saying a lot of the same things. If you say on the far left that it's very teacher focused, where the teacher is directing everything, and in basically the students sit passively and the teacher just delivers to them. As I'm hearing you guys speak, I'm like, yeah, we're kind of on the same page. We want to move to the right. Mr. Richardson, your little ones in the background, we want them on the far right. We want them to own their learning. We want them to direct what is happening in their life. We want every student everywhere not to be on the left, sitting passively, being spoon-fed. We want to be on the road, empowered, contacting mentors outside of our schools, getting their work, their projects, everything that they're doing, getting it to an authentic audience. This is my passion. This is like, took me a while to get my arrow, I call it the arrow, and to get that, to see where we want education to go, where there's voice, there's choice, there's all these things. So this is my passion. And I've always been kind of the oddball in the room, in the grade level, in the math committee, in whatever committee I am, because I can see this passion of where we can get our students. And hearing you speak from a business perspective, I'm like, yes, I'm on the right path. I'm going to stay. All right, go ahead and advance. A couple of the books I'm reading right now, I love to read. Mr. Richardson, you're going to be with me. I love to read. Yes, come on. I'm passionate, and we can get in a book club together, because the one in the middle, honestly, is life-changing. Limitless Minds. When we start to take the neuroscience, that what we know now because of MRI technology, and when we see all of this, it's all of a sudden our brains can just, and to give this message to our students, it's really, really exciting. And we can learn anything. It's just a matter of a mindset that we can do anything. And so go ahead and advance. Those are my favorites right now. I'm also have pivoted during this time. I have used to travel far more than I'd ever like to admit. I never was one of those that count how many nights you're in a hotel, because it would just make me bad. And so so I've had pivoted during this time, and I have now an app. I'm pretty excited, but I have an app yay, for my professional learning, where professional learning has really shifted to awesome opportunities like this, and opportunities where we can learn anytime, anywhere, on any device. And I'm really excited about that from the world of professional learning. And so I'm working right now while I'm on my green screen. I'm on course number 4, where I am focusing on empowering learners, creating flexible learners. So things have really changed in kind of my world, and I'm excited to hear connections to the business world. So go ahead and advance. All right, so this is where we're going. So if you think about my arrow, I'm over here and I'm out here, because a lot of people want to cling to that far left. Sit still, be quiet. Let me tell you everything I know. I'm over here. This is where we're going, everybody. And this is what every student, any color, every student deserves: flexible thinking and learning how to learn, because they are all going to be just like you, Mr. Richardson. They're going to, I didn't like reading then, but I'm going to try it now. And that's my passion, and that's what I'm here to share. So thanks. I think that's the last slide. Maybe one more. Yes. All right. We are here to empower. That's what I want. I don't want people sitting passively. I don't want to go back. I don't want to waste a pandemic. I want to empower learning. Go with me on my arrow. And to hear you talking about this in the business world, of this collaboration, cooperation, all this, that's what we want for every student. And so, Mr. Richardson, with your ones and your little ones, this is where we want them to be, on that arrow. Ms. Ross, you're there, you're leading us, and it's so exciting to be there. And Ms. Robinson, thank you for giving us this wonderful opportunity to empower all learners.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You know, thank you so much to all of you all. Thank you for your words that you're sharing with the next generation. This presentation will be posted for others to watch who were not able to be with us today. But at this time, what questions do you have for our panelists? I'll give you time to drop your questions in the chat, and I will present those questions. I'm going to start with, while I'm waiting for our guests to drop their questions in the chat area, I'm going to start with the question to Miss Ross. You mentioned what I would call the whole person and what we call the whole child. You talked about your experiences abroad, you talked about your experiences in the classroom, but more importantly, what it's like to be a Black woman in that environment. And you start to talk about hair and this idea of, will I be accepted?
Yes.
Because my
Yes.
hair was my hair. And I think most Black women will probably be able to identify with that. So what caused you to take that leap to say, you know, I'm going to do it? And why does that matter?
What caused me to, at least professionally, what caused me to, personally, what caused me to take that leap? I had perms for so many years, and to be quite frank, it was damaging my hair, and it was time to cut it off. That is not to say at all that perms don't work for other people. It just didn't work for me. But I somehow had this thought in my mind that people wouldn't listen to me if my hair wasn't straight, or if my hair wasn't styled in some other way that was more acceptable. That's not something that I was ever told by a manager or by any of my colleagues, or somehow I just got that perception. And I think I was very wrong in that perception. So what was the second part of that question?
I mean, you're answering it. It's just, why does it matter? Why does it matter that you actually, what made you take that leap, and then why does it matter?
Why does it matter is, I think if I had someone to pattern myself after, a woman in leadership that also had natural hair, I probably, who was also accepted in her field, I probably wouldn't have taken a second thought about it, and just did what I had to do that was the most healthiest for myself. But since I didn't have that, I really had to sit and think about, is this the right move for me? And as I said, nobody batted an eye, but the fact that I had to sit and think about that in an atmosphere where I didn't have maybe anyone else I could bounce that off of, who was in leadership, who was also a Black woman, really speaks to, when we have that representation in STEM, regardless of what your hair looks like, you can see, okay, this is okay, this is all right, this will work out. And all of my pedigree of a couple of degrees, Six Sigma Black Belt, working in industry for 10 years, that's what people will look at when they see me. They won't look at an afro, or they won't look at permed hair, or they won't look at curled hair. They'll look behind me and say, oh, okay, she's got all this behind her. She is the subject matter expert, whatever her hair looks like. So I think that's why that mattered.
Thanks for speaking to that. I think it's important for people to know, who don't live those experiences, that that's not uncommon. But we have a question from a guest. It says, Ms. Ross, you mentioned being afraid of giving the wrong answer being something you experienced, but you also mentioned that picking someone that isn't ready but can get ready as a strategy. How do you think a calling on a student should look if you are trying to pull everyone into a class discussion in a math class? Great question. Thank you for posing that.
That is something I had to get over myself. I was called upon on math classes, and I was afraid of giving the wrong answer. And I just got so, especially in middle school, I just got so down on myself, just really beat myself up. And I can't tell you how I moved past that, whether it was a mentor during that time, whether it was my parents, whether it was another educator that finally broke me out of that and said, it's not the end of the world if you don't get the answer that it's supposed to be. It's not the end of the world. You're learning, you're growing. This is not a deal breaker that if the answer is -2 and you end up with 2. The important thing here is that you get the methodology. The important thing here is that you get, I'm thinking of trigonometry in my mind right now. So the important thing is that you get that methodology. If you're doing proofs, the important thing is that you get the proof and you understand, if you're faced with that situation again, that you can prove it out for yourself. And so I don't really know, I wish I could accredit it to somebody. I don't really know who broke me out of that. And when I was broken out of that, I'm like, okay, well, I can learn.
Well, hopefully it was a teacher who
Yes.
creates a safe space to say
Yes.
that it's okay. And I always tell students, never sit and suffer in silence. If you don't know, ask.
But to answer the guest
And we have
question.
we have one more question and about
Oh.
3 more minutes before just
Okay.
just as a check. We have one more question that I'd like to ask from the audience.
Okay, go ahead.
So Van and Valerie both seem brave in being themselves. Van mentioned liking representing Black men when he is the only one in the room. How can we help cultivate that empowerment in our students? And you should know that this is a college professor, a chemistry professor who's posing this question. So Van, if you could in about a minute or so answer, how can we help cultivate that empowerment in our students?
Well, I think one of the key pieces that Ms. Ross just stated was like not being afraid to not have the answer. And if you follow or look at any of the posts that I've made publicly, even in my CIO article, it was really not being afraid to say you don't know. You know, teaching our youth, our kids, to be able to admit and be humble in that response, that you don't always have to have the right answer, but the fact that you took the time to think about it, first of all, and you took the time, and your teachers took the time to help you in that aspect. I think it's very critical there, because if we walk into boardrooms, if we walk into other corporate environments or other larger scenarios, it's, you know, if you're going to be in a perspective where you can't be yourself and be honest with yourself, we're failing from initial. We're failing from the start. So building that confidence, teaching that confidence, and then also then providing an alternative path on how you get there. And I think that's what really helps cultivate our students.
Thank you so much, Van, for saying that and speaking to your experiences, what it's like, and to the guests who are here watching us and who will watch this. You're seeing the end of a journey. Valerie has talked about her journey to accepting herself and being healthy because of the perception. Van has talked about his journey to being brave enough to say, I didn't like that. And so for children who have been minoritized, who are sitting in your classrooms, you may have a classroom that's predominantly white students. You may have a group of, and there's a few, but that empowerment piece is so vital. If we are going to change the course in America with STEM, we have to solve our own problems as it relates to health, environmental issues. That's going to come from the generation that we empower in classrooms. We can't afford to simply just educate a few who are going to learn well by sitting and listening and reading. I'm like Van, I can read, I read well, but it just wasn't something I necessarily liked. So Meg's point about, you know, doing projects, you know, give me a project as a child, then I was going to take off. And so that's something that I'm going to talk about I'm going to end the show here in my next breakout session. So that's where we're going to be moving towards. At this time, Meg dropped a comment, Ms. Watkins, dropped a comment. Meg, do you think that the COVID pandemic will cause more teachers to embrace your awesome approach to learning as they are reimagining schools? that question is to, oh, so she answered in the chat, but I'll give you a minute to
Yeah, just quickly,
respond to that.
people are finally tuning in. I feel like it's crazy. I've been like talking about teaching and learning with technology for 30 plus years. And finally people are tuning in. And I really do think the pandemic has opened possibilities for people to think about education potentially in new ways. And our systems are so slow to move, but I sure do hope that this has been kind of a wake-up call for all of us to say, hey, maybe we all don't have to sit still and sit here and listen to this at the same time. And I'm really, really hoping it just opens new conversations and possibilities.
Thank you so much. I hate to rush. I could have this conversation with you all. I'd like to again thank Ms. Ross, Mr. Richardson, Ms. Ormiston for joining us today. Oh, there's your Commodore 64. Wonderful. I'm going to share a story about what gift I got and talk about parent and community connections to STEM to support STEM learning. We know that teachers can do their job even better when they have the support of the families and communities. And the toy that I got that piqued my interest, not the Commodore 64, but Fisher Price had a little toy microscope that my mom bought me when I was probably 7 or 8. And I was just like, oh, this is it. This is it. So I am going to end our panel today. Again, many thanks to you all for joining and sharing your insights. But Meg and I have to go because we have breakouts to lead. And so we're going to talk about, ways that teachers and strategies and methods for teachers. So off we to Zane.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.